let's jump into chapter 20, the vision of holiness. The way we do this, everybody should have a booklet. I've picked out certain passages from the course that I really want to look at. I'll be reading from those, and then we'll stop to discuss various aspects of it. This chapter is a little bit lighter than chapter 19. What made 19 a little bit heavy was the terminology and the sort of looking at the darkness of the ego, talking about the hungry dogs of fear and the savage search for sin, and some really the heaviest language in the Course in Miracles. That's going to happen again as we get into 22 and 23. But 20 lightens up just a little bit. It talks about the power of the mind, vision and forgiveness, etc. This first part of this chapter was, in fact, the first part of this chapter was written on Palm Sunday. So that's reflected in the early passages. So let's look at on page 1. We'll start at the bottom. And I'm going to start actually at the bottom of that first quote, just before that, just the last two words where it says, not the very, well, it's the second one actually. The ego separates through the body. See that? The ego separates through the body. The Holy Spirit reaches through it to others. Part of what we're going to encounter in this chapter is more talk about the body. The body is it's a big issue for all of us because we think that we are bodies. And yet the Course in Miracles is incredibly clear that you are not a body. I love the fact that the Course even says, not for a single instant does the body exist at all. And then when you read that kind of a line, you go, whoa, what? Not even for an instant does it exist at all. That's because it's a dream figure. It's a figure within the context of it, but it looks very real, just like our dreams at night look very real. When we're having the dream, it looks like these events really are occurring. And yet, the next day you wake up and you recognize it was simply a dream. It had no reality. So the Course is really saying that that's true for the world that we're in as well, that we are dreaming our ways through this. It all looks very, very real. I mean, after all, it has a certain physical quality about it, but it's really just another level. It's not ultimate reality, if you will. It's not heaven, that's for sure, right? But we can also reach heaven here. But heaven is something which we reach with the mind, not with the body. The Course says heaven is it's not a place. It's an awareness. It's an awareness of perfect oneness, right? And if you read Anita Marjani's book, Dying to Be Me, she says pretty much the same thing, that her experience was that it was just a kind of a pure state of being, which is really kind of hard for us to grasp. What are you talking about, a pure state? Because it lacks that physical quality, so it's hard for us to begin to imagine it. And yet everybody who has one of these near-death experiences, every one of them, inevitably, like Cora here, will come back and say, I remember when Cora talked about this a few months ago. At the end of it, do you mind my saying? At the end of her description, she kind of did this. She go, whoa, that's home. That's reality. That's where I want to be. That's where we all want to be, which doesn't mean that you want to do away with this body, because we're in the body for a reason. And the thing that is to work our way through this body until we can be able to understand that ultimately the body doesn't mean anything. And proof of that fact is that every body disappears. Rust, rots, decays, turns to ashes, leaves this world. And yet what we're going to see in this chapter a lot is there is a you that is quite real, which has nothing to do with this world at all, except as a memory, except as something that's inside all of us that does know about this, which is why you're here. Why you're here is because there's enough of this memory inside you that you want to know more about this. Actually, everybody does. A sort of a difference between what's happening with you or the folks who are watching is that you're actively engaged in this search. Everybody actually is, but we're more actively engaged. I came across this on the internet this week. I wish I'd have printed it out and brought it with me. A piece from the Huntington Post, which was talking about A Course in Miracles. And I don't know who wrote this piece, but it said that The Course in Miracles was probably the most important book that had ever been written. And I would have to agree with that. I mean, I can't think of any other book that has had a greater reference to really the truth than this. And you know that that's true yourselves, which is why you're studying it. Let's go to the bottom of page 1. And let me read this part from the Holy Week. This week we celebrate life, not death. There's a certain sense in which the Course actually talks about, and this may not sound very nice, but what we're experiencing here is a certain level of death. And by death, I mean, we're not really awake. We're not really fully. There's a certain sense, I've talked about this in the past, that what we're doing here is a kind of sleepwalking through life. Some of us more unconscious than others, so even more engaged in the sleepwalking, kind of routinely going through the motions of, but not feeling very happy about that. So it's when you start doing the Course, you start feeling as though it's not that you are awake, but you're awakening. There's an awakening. You're cognizant of the awakening that's going on. It's like that struggle we all go through in the morning as we're coming out of sleep and coming into and we're kind of in this in-between world there for a while, and we're sort of like struggling a little bit. There's a part of us that wants to pull us back into sleep, and there's another part of us that's no, let's go ahead and let's get alive now. Let's get moving now. Let's get on with it now, right? Back to this quote. Offer your brother the gift of lilies, not the crown of thorns, the gift of love and not the gift of fear. So, actually, let me just skip ahead for a second. We'll jump around here a little bit if you don't mind, okay? Let's go up for just a second to page 8, because it relates to what I'm just talking about. There's a section here that's called Sin as an Adjustment. Do you see that on page 8? Because it explains the sleepwalking part a little bit better. The belief in sin is an adjustment. And an adjustment is a change, a shift in perception, or a belief that what was so before has been made different. Every adjustment is therefore a distortion and calls for defenses to uphold it against reality. Nothing requires no adjustment, knowledge, well, nothing. I should wear glasses sometimes. Knowledge requires no adjustment and, in fact, is lost if any shift or change is undertaken. For this reduces it at once to mere perception. Now keep in mind the Course draws a very important distinction between perception and knowledge. Right? So let's talk about this a moment. So perception is what happens with the body's eyes. Perception is what's going on with most of us, most all the time. We have an awareness of a world. We especially have an awareness of other people that are present in the world. Again, it all seems like it's very real, but this is not yet a level of knowledge. Knowledge is a kind of inner knowing or a kind of inner conviction of the truth, of the reality of who we really are. So let me try to explain this a little bit better. The Course really is saying that there's two worlds. In a sense, there's two worlds. In fact, there's only one. But as far as our learning is concerned, there's two worlds. Okay? So if we had a board here and I could write on it, I'd draw the real world at the top, or heaven, we could call it at the top, right? We would draw a line, and then we would have this world, the world of perception, the world that we're in most of the time. okay? So it says sin is an adjustment. Now let's talk about what it means when it says, so our eternal reality is that we really are now and always have been up here. That's where we live. This is home. The Course uses the word home some 300 times. People very often talk about, well, actually, Cora, when you told us about your experience, you said, "Whew, that's home," right? And I've talked about how many people on their deathbeds have said, "I want to go home." I mean, that's just a really very, very. I was just did a talk in Syracuse a couple of weeks ago, and I told the story that I've told you in the past about a woman named Mrs. Vosch who said she wanted to go home on her deathbed. And one of the ladies in the workshop said, well, we had the same experience with my mom. And she said, myself and my 3 sisters, so there were 4 sisters, they were with her mother in her home at the time that she died. And the mother said, she's dying, she says, I want to go home. And one of the sisters said, you are home, to which she said, no, not this home. I mean, no, not this house. I don't mean this place, right? So there's a sense in which we understand it's not this one, it's the eternal home. It's the home where we don't feel lost. There's a sense in which we're kind of lost in this world. And we kind of got to try to figure out, much of our time is trying to figure out how to get back home again. It's like we're all on this mystery tour, journey process that's going on. And there's a certain sense in which that's true. I mean, there's kind of a journey in which we have to figure out how to get back home. That's very frequently a story. A lot of stories are about getting back home again, right? Okay. So when it says sin is an adjustment, let's say, so we live here. This is home. We come into this world, and this world is a place of sin. So let's talk about what sin is. And the Course also says, by the way, that you have been very poorly taught. That's a line from the Course. You've been very poorly taught. So what we're taught in this world is that sin is real. So the truth is that sin has no reality at all. The reason why sin has no reality is because it's not a part of heaven. There's no sin in heaven. That would be impossible for there to be sin in heaven. Another word that we could use for sin is separation. In fact, as you could say, sin equals separation, separation equals sin, right? So it's a sense of brokenness. Now, what happens when we come into this world? We buy the world, we buy the game, we buy the story of the world, and we ourselves also see sin. We see lots of sin. It's all over the place. In fact, as our minds get caught into this trap of searching out for sin, we're always on the lookout for sin. And one of the particular places that in this chapter talks about that we find sin and we see sin is in our brothers and sisters' bodies. Okay, the body is the symbol of sin. And then we throw a lot of, and that's where we make our judgments. We make judgments based upon the body. And the Course is asking us to try to begin to be able to look past the body. Okay, not even to be able to see. Now this is a challenge of a certain sort, right? Because you don't see the body at all. Because if what you're seeing is just the body, then it's a very limited perception. Because again, the body is something that we make all the judgments about. How do you look out at the world and see bodies, your own included, when you in the mirror, in the picture, right, and not make judgments about it? The Course is asking us to be able to see the innocence within. Or another word that they use, it says the Christ within. Now, the Christ and innocence are the same thing. I mean, that's why we have Christmas, where we see Jesus as an innocent baby, where we see the innocence within the babies, because they have not yet, and it's not, Ken would say babies are not innocent. But there's a kind of relative innocence there. You know, they haven't really learned the ways of the world yet. They will. They will become very carefully taught. And for South Pacific, you got to be taught to hate and fear. You got to be carefully taught. Well, we are very carefully taught. And what we're taught is that there are problems in the world. There are difficulties in the world. There are reasons. Even as a child, infant, I stub my toe and I cry. This affirms the fact that I am a body, and bodies can be hurt, right, by outside circumstances. And not only can my body be hurt, but then as my mind develops, my mind can be hurt. Now, my mind can be hurt. I mean, I can be insulted. You can insult a baby like all get out, who has not yet developed language, and it would have no effect, right? I mean, if there's no cognizance, you idiot, you stupid little baby, has no effect on the baby, right? But now, once the baby gets a name, see that, especially when the name comes, when the identity, that word means, that means Nancy. That means Nancy. That's somehow that's me. And now now Nancy can be hurt by words, right? Because she's beginning to make the identification with that, make that connection. So when the Course says sin is an adjustment, it's something that we adjust to. We adjust to the fact that the world is cruel and harsh and difficult, and there's all kinds of problems out there, and now we join with our parents and the rest of the world in actually seeking out sin. One of the phrases that was in the last chapter, chapter 19, with the savage search for sin. Okay, so we're engaged in this savage search for sin. We're looking for problems. We like to find problems. We like to find problems because this proves that you're an idiot and I'm not. I didn't mean to point to you, Michael. This was a general gesture in this direction. That someone, and we love it. We relish it. It becomes so much a part of our way of thinking that we can't leave things alone. We just can't, and we can't see the innocence. We can't see the wholeness. We can't, in a baby maybe you can, especially if you're, but it becomes more and more difficult. And it doesn't make any difference who that person is, that innocence is still there. Let me give you a little illustration from a little bit of my own kind of learning. It was an interesting lesson for me about this that happened, probably 35 years ago. I was working as a Methodist minister up near where I live now, and I was in this is the New York chapter of the United Methodist Church, or 250 churches, something like that. And then there were districts. So in the district that I was in, there were like 58 churches, I think, in our district. And there would be a national annual conference, but then there would be local district meetings as well, right? So I have gone to one of these district meetings, and we're doing whatever you do at one of these district meetings, and we come to a break. Okay, we have a 15-minute break, and so go to the bathrooms and get a drink and do things. And I'm just sort of standing there, and I look around. I thought, well, let me find somebody interesting to talk to. I mean, that would be a normal sort of thing to do, right? Let's find somebody interesting to talk to. And I look around, and I see that people that I do know, friends, they're kind of all busy or talking to me. And I look down the aisle that I'm on, and I see this fellow that I don't really know, but I do know, I know his name. He's very overweight. He's got a really rumpled suit on. I know that he has a reputation for not being a very effective minister. He's serving a very small church. He's got dandruff all over his shoulders of his jacket. And oh no, somebody else. Let me find somebody else to talk to here. But everybody else seems to be, well, what the heck, let me try. I'm going to go over and I start talking to this fellow, and he just turns out to be the sweetest human being in the world. And I find out that he has a retarded son that I hadn't known, and that this retarded son demands a great deal of his attention. In fact, there's so much of his attention that he's not always able to be at church and working and being effective in the world as he would like to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the next thing you know, this guy becomes one of my best friends, right? And then at other meetings after that, I start searching him out, because I know we have a relationship, we have a very positive, it's just an illustration of how we make all these judgments based upon appearance and based upon whatever the externals are. But the truth of the matter is, and this is true for everyone, right? It's true for absolutely everyone. Everyone has got this soul nature, and it's really looking to kind of break out. It's really looking for a little opportunity for just a demonstration of love, just a little demonstration of caring, a little demonstration of a willingness to overlook the external factors that are going on, to find out that there's this. We all know the story of the Elephant Man, right? Who was just from the late 1800s, early into the early 1900s, I think. It was just totally deformed, right, in every way. And yet everyone who met him said he was the sweetest soul, right? He just has this really, it just wants to be able to make connection, wants to be able to, it's true everywhere. And I also discovered this working in prison, because in prison, these guys had done some pretty rough things. Otherwise, you had to have a minimum of a 3-year sentence to be at Sing Sing. That's a minimum, right? So it was anything from 3 years to life. And yet, once I get to know that they just made some really bad mistakes. The environment that they'd grown up in didn't help at all, or the lack of the presence of a decent family, a father, et cetera, to help them along the way. But it didn't mean that this isn't, in the terms of the Course in Miracles, we're absolutely all equal. God has no favorite sons and daughters. There's absolutely none. And part of what the Course is teaching us is that we must learn to see each other that way. We must, that's the lesson. That's the schoolhouse that we're in. The schoolhouse that we're in is to discover the reality of the eternal. That's why it says the body is not the temple of the soul. St. Paul got that wrong, right? In terms of the Course. In terms of the Course, St. Paul says the body is the temple of the soul. Well, it's not the body. In terms of the Course, it's a relationship is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So it's in the relationship, and it's in getting, and one of my favorite lines from the Course, divine abstraction, which is a term for God, takes joy in sharing, right? So there's really nothing more fun for us, actually, than sharing whatever event it is that we're sharing. And of course, the thing to share, which is why we love falling in love, right? Because falling in love, this is really sharing. This is big sharing. This is total sharing. By total sharing, I mean it's sharing to the point where all you want to do is give to the beloved. I mean, that's you just want. You can't look for ways to bring joy to the beloved, in which case we're bringing joy to ourselves. Divine abstraction, that's God takes joy in sharing. You are God. Now, sometimes, granted it all becomes a little, a little difficult. In which case, actually, Shanti, I don't think you'll mind my saying this. Shanti and I just spent a week together on a retreat leading the Course in Miracles, not Course in Miracles, the seminary students through a week-long training program, the last of the week before they graduate. And Shanti got in the car this morning and she said something about, I'm a little overwhelmed with people, I'm peopled out. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm peopled out, right? Because this has been a week of peopling. So they need a little break. So they need a little break because part of peopling, it's fun. On the other hand, at times it's also a little bit of work. Remember, Sartre said, hell is other people. And sometimes it's that way, because we're all crazy here in terms of the Course. I mean, let's give we're really crazy. So because we're not really here yet, we're not fully home yet. So the Course is trying to help us to get so completely home that you can live in an insane world and not be insane. In fact, that you can live in, and that's what a Jesus does. Jesus does, or a Buddha does, or you can live in an insane world and it won't affect you. You will not go insane yourself, right? But we're in training to learn how to be able to live in an insane world and not go insane. Jesus gets it down so good that he's able to go to a cross and be crucified by these insane people who are part of the society that he's in. And yet at the same time that he's able to do that, he's also able to say, Father, forgive them, because they know not what they do. And that's literally true. They literally don't know what they're doing, right? And by the way, he didn't say that so God would understand how to handle the situation. He said it so that we would understand how to handle much less severe circumstances, which seem when insanity seems to be coming our way. One of my teachers, Dr. Thomas Hoare. Anybody ever know Dr. Thomas Hoare? He was also a teacher of transpersonal psychology. So I was at Wainwright House, is where I studied with Dr. Hoare. And he used to say, ignorance isn't a person. What do you mean by people they're coming out of ignorance. They literally don't know better. But this, just because they don't know better doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat them with the same level of love and respect as everyone else. Because and this is very coarse again, and we'll probably come across this a few times in this chapter, because as we treat him, we treat ourselves. As we love the other, we love ourselves. This is why, once it starts off here, it starts off with, let's go to page 2 for a second. I said we drop. The section 2 there is called the gift of lilies. I'm not going to read that quite yet, but what the gift of lilies means is, do I offer my brother the gift of lilies? Now, the gift of lilies is forgiveness. Do I offer my brother forgiveness? Or do I offer my brother thorns? These are the two I can offer. The thorns are attacks. This is the attack. And the ego, of which we're all a part, which we're slowly learning how to be free of. It takes a lot of work to learn how to be really free of this thing. That's what this takes 365 lessons, a whole year, and much study, and we're moving in the right direction, but we're not there yet. But thank God we got a guidebook that at least is taking us in the right direction, so that we're learning how to be offering lilies to the world rather than offering thorns, rather than offering our attack thoughts and our opinions and our. One of the things the ego likes to do, which is like sin is an adjustment, is that we just relish finding problems. I mean, we just relish finding difficulties. And if you can't find one right away, you just look a little harder. Just look a little deeper. It's there. That you can find it if you just things aren't working quite right at work. Well, it's somebody's fault, or something's not quite right in the family situation, and it's not you, of course, but somebody's to blame. All right. So we're flipping around. Now, I want to tell you about one way to see this that has come to me in the last couple of weeks that I think is really, really helpful. Some of you may have heard about, there's another book out there now besides A Course in Miracles called A Course of Love, right? That's been written by a woman named Marie Perron. And I first of all, let me say, the Course in Miracles will always be central to my life. That's it. I know that I will be studying this and working on this. I know that it's all there. I respect the fact that there are others who can also hear and who can also be sensitive. We all can. We can all hear. But I appreciate the fact that there are others who begin to hear also with clarity and be hearing something similar, a little different because it's a different person. So Helen is a Ph.D. intellectual psychologist who puts all the Course this is spiritual psychology of the highest quality. So we put it together, and we all can see that this is spiritual psychology of the highest quality. So Marie, who I've spent time with twice now, and I've got to know her publisher better and better over time. We've been doing a lot of emailing back and forth. There's also been hearing, and this is the book that she's written called A Course of Love. You might want to look at it at some point. And Glenn, who's the name of her publisher, pointed out to me that instead of the word forgiveness appears a lot in the Course in Miracles, right? I mean, this is a big thing. It's all about forgiveness. We're kind of letting go, right? Seeing things differently, not holding on to my grudges and my attack thoughts and the problems that I see in the world. This is central to understanding the Course. Ken Wapnick, when he started his foundation for A Course in Miracles, used a stylized word, forgiveness, over a star as symbolic of the whole approach, right? Well, anyhow, Glenn pointed out to me that the word forgiveness does not appear in A Course of Love as much as another word, and that word is acceptance. Now, acceptance is very similar to A Course in Miracles. I mean, to the word forgiveness. Actually, acceptance is forgiveness, right? But it appears a lot more frequently than the word forgiveness does, right? Whereas the Course is the other way around. The word forgiveness appears a lot more frequently than the word acceptance is in there. All right, but think about this. Just forgiveness seems to imply that there's something you have to do, right? I mean, it's work. You got to actually overtly do this thing. You've got to forgive someone. You've actually got to engage, you've got to actually engage in this change of mind, right? And sometimes, when you begin to, you'll run into resistance on this. I have to forgive him, or I have to forgive her for what he did or what she did. I mean, they really hurt me. You know what I mean? He really I loved him and he left me, I mean, whatever it is, whatever the extent. But acceptance has this lighter quality about it. And acceptance is you can kind of relax into acceptance. You can kind of just let it be. Okay, so this person is the way that they are. It just seemed to me it's kind of an easier door. It's still, forgiveness is behind the door. But to think of I'm just going to let, I won't say what, I ran into difficulty with somebody recently about opinions on how the procedural processes should work and something. And, I'm just going to let her be her. Just, it'll work out fine. Let me not go kicking up sand and dirt here. I mean, let me not go saying you're wrong and pointing out the problem. And I have a feeling that this will all just settle. That the dust will settle and it'll be okay. But that's not what the ego wants to do. The ego wants to say, no, you should change now. We have a real problem here, and this should be fixed. But maybe there isn't really a problem here, and maybe maybe God knows how to fix this. Maybe the Holy Spirit knows how to fix this. Once I think I may have told you once. When I was having a real problem with somebody else, I went to see Ken about it. And Ken said, he asked me, he says, well, have you asked for help on this? I mean, have you asked the Holy Spirit about helping you with this? And I said, well, yes, I did. And Ken said, well, what did the Holy Spirit say? And I said, well, he said, let me handle this. And so Ken just looks at me and goes, well, let me handle this. There's actually a passage in chapter 20, which we're looking at today, where it says, if you can do this, it's talking about following God's plan for salvation. It says, if you're willing to follow God's plan, if you're willing to allow God's plan for salvation to unfold. In other words, if you don't interfere with God's plan for salvation, so much of this is just about allowing God's plan to unfold and not interfering with the process, not thinking you got to get in there and facilitates the correction that needs to be made. But let the Holy, of course, He will go ahead of you, making straight your path. You are removing, this is all symbolic now. But He will go ahead of you, removing every stone that's in the way, right? But it's a matter of us letting the Holy Spirit remove every stone. In other words, everything that we might trip over along the way, right? So there won't be anything that we have to trip over because we'll allow it to be, and we'll know that the best is actually going to come. We'll know that it's going to work. But our job is just to keep moving in the right direction, to keep allowing the Holy Spirit to be the guide. As I continue to allow the Holy Spirit to be the guide and just be really, really aware how often ego really wants to, the ego sort of sitting in the background going, I'd like to, I'd like to get my opinion in here. I'd like to get my 2 cents in. I'd like to say how I feel about this, and then you let that happen. I mean, you let the ego have a voice for a moment, and then a little bit later you're going, why the hell did I say that? Why couldn't I have left it alone? I don't think I really helped out here. I think I probably made it more of a mess of things than it would have been if I just let it be. Okay, Shanti can you give a mic to Shanti there? Oh, you've got it right there, okay. Well, wait, don't. Get the mic first.
Hi, everybody. I was reacting to this concept of forgiveness when I began to hear that, it's not that I forgive you first Actually, it's I forgive me for having judged you in the first place.
Oh, of course.
I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks. It's that more often we overlook the fact that when we are forgiving someone, it means already that we've judged them. And once we relinquish the judgment, forgiveness becomes automatic. I like to see you nodding, Barry.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
It warms the cockles of my heart. Okay. Did that occur to you?
Sure.
I mean, you know, we every time we hit the forgiveness button, it's the time to blink and say, uh-oh, I did it again. I caught myself. I think that the tendency that we have to look for God out there is to overlook the God that's indwelling. Do I make sense on that one?
Of course.
You there?
Yeah.
You with me?
Are you there?
Are you ready? Thank you.
So, jumping on to what Shanti was just saying, I think I've said before that the way that you know forgiveness works, the way that you really know that it really works for you is if you do this. I mean, if you actually let something go, right? You don't make an issue out of this thing. You let it be what it is. You really release it. There's a simple way to tell if you've really forgiven. And the simple way to tell if you've really forgiven is because if you really do it and you really let it go, then you'll have this, oh my God, I'm the one who's forgiven. I'm the one who's liberated. I'm the one who's free. Because this is no longer a burden to me, right? That rhymed, right? I'm the one who's free because it's no longer a burden to me. And that's a wonderful feeling. But you've got to go all the way with it. Because if you don't go, then you're still holding on to something, all right? And you're not free. You're not liberated, right? And Martin, we had to pass the mic back to Billy. You want to come meet Martin and get the mic from him?
Yeah, I had my challenge, as you say, in forgiveness coming out the door this morning even, you know. I live in like a 4-condo thing, you know, so the neighbor across from me, like 25 years ago, we had a physical fight, you know, he said I made noise with my 9-year-old son there. And in the meantime, he moved out and his mother had moved in. So the past 25 years, she'd been there and suddenly she had to leave. So I woke up this morning, and who I see is moving back in. So, like you talk about the doors in front of me, and I know he's next door to his friend. They're working on renovating the apartment. I'm going, how am I going to handle this? Like you said, forgiveness, acceptance, and the door is still in front of me because once I open the door, I open up and there he is. And he goes, hey, Bill, how you doing? This is my brother, and this is all. And everything just went, my way into to see you today made my day so much better. But there was probably my ego was fighting me. Go in there. You're going to get even with him, you know. But everything just went out the window. So that made my day. I share that.
Great, thank you, Bill. I think Billy is describing something that we've all experienced a lot, right? I mean, I'd say that we're all kind of in this, we're very often in this in-between position. But it's also kind of wonderful. I mean, he's been gone for a while and all that. So sometimes that let go can happen in the meantime, and we get sort of removed from this situation so that someone that you had this harsh feeling about, and now some time has passed, and now you come back and you sort of recognize that, hey, this is my buddy, this is my brother. You know, I can remember once as a kid, talking about a fight, right? Actually having a physical fight with a kid in high school, right? Back in the early high school days. And it's hard to explain what happened. I don't know exactly what happened, but later he turned out to be one of my best buddies, right? I mean, there was something in the beginning that actually got us into physically disagreeing with each other, but there was something about that too that it's hard to explain how a friendship could come out of that, but it did, right? And there's something about the closeness, even of the of that situation that enabled, we had shared this thing together, and I think we both had kind of let it go somehow. So that now brings us even closer together. It's like couples experience this a lot in marriages, right? Where you have a fight, and then there's nothing like making up. Right? I mean, then when the love comes back in the door and you're headed for the bedroom, where you really want to make it up. Now there was Cora. Let's have a mic for Cora as well. Thanks.
Hello.
Hey, Cora.
Talk about
If
forgiveness.
you don't mind, well, no, he's got a good shot of you. Go ahead.
Talk about forgiveness. I had a big one. When I found out that I was brought back to life, I had a big issue with my doctor. I hated the fact that I came back because of him. I was in the darkest place ever. The fact that, oh my God, why am I here? I should have been there.
But can I just back up a second and let everybody know, especially people that don't know, that Cora, she had an operation. She was wearing a do not resuscitate bracelet, and they did resuscitate her, and they did bring her back. So that's a prelude to your, go ahead.
So therefore, I've been meditating, and because I couldn't even look at the book. I was in a different place. And the ego was just like, whoa, like it was like buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. Sue them, take away his license, he deserved it, and things like that. And it took a long time for me. I had to quit my job. That's how bad it was. I had to quit my job to the fact
really?
that I couldn't. I'm in the fashion industry. I'm a designer, children's wear. It's just crazy. But the fact that my job and my private life and my family couldn't even understand what's going on with me. They're like, why don't you see a psychiatrist and antidepressant? I'm like, no, I'm not depressed. I just, you don't get it.
No, of
I
course
shouldn't
not.
be here. What I had experienced is, oh my God, it's not even comparison. I feel stupid for explaining it. It's not like going to the Disneyland or whatnot. No, it's not. It's a different plateau. And anyway, so I quit my job and I've been going to the beach and just meditating. And one night, out of nowhere, the door, a UPS came in my house, and there's 10 books of A Course in Miracle got delivered. And I'm like, oh, who ordered these? And so, anyway, so my mom called me. She's like, so I called my mom. I said, did you order anything from Amazon or whatnot? And she said, no, that's your book. I'm like, okay, fine. And then that night I meditated, and then it just so clearly crossed my mind, like, it's a gift. So what I did the following day, I went into the Palisade Hospital, and I gave the book to those people that were part of the operating room. I needed to let go.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to forgive. Not them, it's more me for feeling or thinking horrible things. Oh my God, I never thought that I could curse from one thing to another. I was like, oh my God, I never thought I could curse like that. And my whole entire life, the prim and proper in me went out the door. I was like, oh, wow. So I needed to get back to how I started learning the Course in Miracle. And it took a while, and now I'm back. And anyway, so Dr. Rahula called me. She's like, Cora, what is this? He's Hindu. Why do you give me this A Course in Miracle? And I said, you may not need it now, but hopefully one day you will, and you will understand why.
Nice. Good story. And I think also corresponding to something very deep there too, and that we're all still in process. We also got a lot of work to do. And even though we begin to get this, we get the course, don't be surprised if you're not tested on a yet deeper level, where you got to go down into a darker kind of place to let go than you had to let go before, as she did in this particular case. But you can do that. I mean, you can go down there and you can really let go. I mean, you can get down to a really a kind of a total let go. The Course is actually, I think we'll wait and talk about this after the break because it's such an important topic. It's a total let go.
And it's not acceptance.
Go on. Do you tell the mic? Okay.
Because Dr. Hula told me, well, I heard from the hospital that you had accepted the offer. And I said, it's not a matter of accepting it. It's more about forgiving it, forgiving what had happened
Right.
in the operating room, I've seen what you did, and I have to forgive you for that. And I know what I did in my own way, and I have to forgive myself, and I have to just forgive the whole thing. It's not a matter of
Sure.
acceptance. You may think maybe that's how you perceived it, but as far as for me, it's different.
Right. I was really talking about acceptance as an opening door, and that forgiveness is the bigger door. Beyond the acceptance, I mean, the acceptance can lead to the forgiveness, because the forgiveness is the complete let go, whereas the acceptance is just the sort of allowing for that opportunity for the deeper forgiveness to occur. But if I can just get to acceptance in the first place, then that's a start. You know, that's a place where I don't have to be angry with this person. I don't have to attack this person. I can let things be what they are, and it's probably going to work out just fine anyhow, right? Okay. Alex, Martin, you're in charge of the mic here.
Yeah, thank you, John. I really did appreciate the acceptance and forgiveness thought, because often when I'm in the process of forgiveness, I'm going through something where I'm saying, it's really not you, it's me. I'm going through a process, and I'm trying to, and what's really fast in my thinking is the ego, which is saying boom, boom, boom out there. And if I can just accept first, like you say, I've opened the door and I've slowed it down. I can
Exactly.
just slow it down, and then maybe I can begin to realize, what people have said about forgiveness.
Right.
Slowing it down. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, slowing down is a good way to see what the acceptance is. I mean, among other things, the slowing down is, well, I don't have to do anything about this now. I don't need to write a nasty letter I don't need to get on the phone. I don't have to call up somebody else and talk about, look what so-and-so did. I can just, let me be at peace with this today or tomorrow, or etc. I tell you about, I think I did, maybe I told you this story, but if I did, I'll just show part of it, and then we'll take our break. About the guy that decided to kill himself, put the gun to his head. That tells. Very briefly, those that don't know, there's a psychologist friend told me about a guy who he was in such trouble in the world, IRS, wife leaving him, big debts, unsuccessful business, et cetera, et cetera. He decides to kill himself, puts a gun to his head, and then he thinks, I'm going to be dead in a few seconds. So before I die, let me just have 1 minute of peace. Oh my God. He actually had a minute of peace. So if he had 1 minute, he could have 2, right? Well, I won't finish the story because you've heard it, but he doesn't kill himself. In fact, as his whole life turned around, just from the realization he could have a minute of peace. Let's take our break.